rock it all
Throw
right.
it in the floor. Here we go. You ready?
Ready.
Put it on the phone. Call this Washington County Board of Education meeting to order. I'm going to ask Caleb to, after a moment of silence, lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
All rise. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, Dr. Adams, if you're familiar with how we've been doing it, hour and a half. Caleb will do the general questions, and then we'll start with criteria number 1. Each person will finish it, all through all the questions, and then we'll move to the next.
Yes, sir.
And then if you have any opening remarks.
Just like to say, appreciate the opportunity to sit in and be a part of this interview process. It's been my pleasure to serve Washington County Schools since 1999, and appreciate your all's effort to make this system a better school system for everybody involved. So, thank you.
All right, it's all you, Caleb.
So I've got 2 general questions. Your first one, what would you do to maintain a positive climate in schools?
Caleb, when teachers talk about climate in school, what they're really talking about is culture. It's how do you feel when you go into that building? I think some of the key tenets to making a strong school culture is you have to have really good communication. You have to have trust between the people in the building. You have to have a level of respect, and you have to have a sense of hope that the work you're going to do today will benefit the students in that school. A lot of things go into culture. You've got to make the people in the building feel worthwhile, that they're valued. How do you do that? If you ask educators, we understand that the number one determinant on how well students will do is the classroom teacher. So you need to support your teachers. How do you do that? Some people will give you lip service to that. I said it earlier today. You support teachers if you give them gifts or candy in their mailbox. That's great. That's a great morale builder. That's extrinsic stuff. How you feel valued is when it means something inside of you, when it's intrinsic. So you build a positive culture by making sure people understand that you know they're doing the right work in the classroom, that you're able to provide them appropriate, actionable feedback. These are the things you're doing really well. These are the things that have a high impact that you're doing. That builds a good, positive school culture when people feel valued. One of the ways I do that, I like to read books about culture. It's not as easy as you would think to build. Again, a lot of people say, well, you come in and say, hey, you look great today, and everything's fine. That's good, but when you're talking about building a culture in a school building, it takes hard work, because you have to be honest with people, you have to be frank. One of the things I also like to do, I like to look at the Tennessee Educator survey data. It's an anonymous survey all of our teachers and administrators have access to. You can get a glimpse system-wide. You can get a glimpse of each individual school. And it can really go a long ways to giving you an idea of how you want to move forward. Some of you may or may not know, I've got some statistics here, just really quick. 53% of the teachers in our district do not feel the district provides them enough supplies. And the definition of that was pencils and erasers. 37% do not feel they have adequate planning time. So what I like to do when I'm presented with data and information, a lot of times people will say, oh, that's great. That's actionable. Teachers are telling us, hey, I think I need more planning time. I need more time to work with other individuals. That's an issue for them. If it was 10%, that's not so bad. 37%, that's over a third of our teachers are saying, I need more planning time. So how do you build good culture? You listen to your teachers and your administrators, and you build up from that. You make a plan of action, and you try to address the issues that they present to you.
Thank you. Your second question is, what do you consider to be the major strengths that you would bring to this position? And after you answer that, what do you consider to be your weaknesses?
Okay. Talked a little bit again about this earlier today. Strengths is subjective. Until you ask other people what they consider your strengths, it's how you feel about yourself. And I'm not a big storyteller, but I'll tell you a quick story. I used to manage restaurants and had a wait staff, had a bar staff, and there was a young lady who was a server. And if you asked her, "Hey, are you a hard worker?" she would tell you, "Yeah, I'm a hard worker. I make decent tips. My customers are overall pleased with how things are going." But we had a rule at the restaurant, and we call it the FIFO rule. FIFO, full hands in, full hands out, which means if you come off the floor into the kitchen, you're bringing dishes, bringing something in so we can keep things clean. Full hands out. If you don't have something to take to your own table, grab my food, take it to my table. And she didn't do any of those things. So what she didn't understand is while she was taking care of her tables and they were overall satisfied, maybe I needed a little bit of help that night. Maybe I was in the weeds making 200 salads or something like that. I need somebody to run my food out. She wouldn't do that. So what would happen would be my customers would have a bad experience and they wouldn't come back to the restaurant. And maybe the next time they would have sat at her table and so they didn't come back. So if you asked her, "Hey, are you a hard worker?" "Yeah, I'm a hard worker." But you asked the people she worked with, they would have told you no. She's not a team player. She's not a hard worker. She only looks out for herself. So I said all that to say this. In our system, we've had an opportunity to use a Strength Finders book where it's data-driven. We answer a series of questions that seem so arbitrary and ambiguous and you're not sure how it all equates. But at the end of it, it produces a list of strengths. And then we had an opportunity to talk with one another. Are these my strengths? Do you see this in me? And some of my strengths, they usually list like the top 5. One of mine was strategic, which means I have an ability, and I firmly believe this, I have an ability to look through the clutter of what's going on and get to the root problem. And then once I find that problem, to start making a plan of action. And that comes into the next one. And I'm really keen on this name, but it's command. And what that means is have a decisive voice. Once we come up with a plan, I have the fortitude to forge that direction and garner people to come with me. This is the direction we're going, and which feeds into the third one, which is relator. I think I do a really good job of building relationships with people, Caleb. I'm very empathetic. I'm not really sympathetic to a lot of things, but I'm empathetic. I understand where people are coming from. When you understand where people are coming from and they feel you get them, they're very much more inclined to go in the direction you want to go. So I really think those are my strengths as it pertains to my role in education. Again, everybody can say they're a hard worker. Everybody can say they're this or that. But when you ask people what your strengths are, I think that's where you really get an idea of that. And anticipation of this next part, the weakness part, I asked some of our administrators, "Hey, what's my weakness? You're not going to hurt my feelings. I don't have an ego in this. I want to be better." And most of them said, "Jarrod, in regards to what you're doing right now, probably your most perceptible weakness would be you've never been an administrator of a single building." And that, while that is true, I think in my unique position as first an educational diagnostician in Washington County, special ed supervisor in Washington County, since I was supervisor since 2006. I've been the 504 coordinator for the school system since 2006. I'm immersed in our schools. I'm in tons of classrooms. I work with administrators. We've worked from scheduling classes specifically to what type of lessons, content, to reach out to work with our disabled students. I think that has helped me get an idea of what it looks like in each school building and what they go through on a day-to-day basis, because a lot of times that feeds into what it is we're trying to do with the students I'm trying to help. It also helps me by being in each school to give me more of a global perspective of how things are in one school isn't always how they are in another school, and being able to answer questions and be helpful to those principals when we're talking about things in their schools, how it might be different from other schools. So specifically for this position, you know, it might be on paper a weakness. I've never been an administrator, but I think if you asked our principals specifically, I've been there lock and step with them a lot of the ways for what we've been trying to do. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Okay.
What evidence can you cite to demonstrate you are an effective communicator?
One of my roles for the school system is the public information officer. Some people ask me, hey, you nervous, or how you feeling about this today? I'm like, well, I'm not really nervous because I'm used to talking in front of a lot of people. And that doesn't bother me because I try my best to be articulate and to be concise as I can be, and to be informative and make sure that people are getting an idea of what's actually going on, being able to communicate that. Some examples of that is I've been in Hugh committee meetings and have gotten them to understand how we're trying to buy propane buses. Some of you were on the school board when we had the meetings to go over the school rezoning when we were opening a new Boones Creek, and I had the pleasure of being out front of some of that and getting to talk to the parents. And again, and I'll probably say this a bunch tonight, but people just want to be heard and they want things explained to them. And that to me is what communication is all about. So I think I do a really good job of that because I'm also inquisitive and I want to know the why and the how. And I think being able to do that has really benefited the system. You know, I do a lot of our press releases. A lot of our school system, our school level people who give out press releases, they send them to me to say, hey, does this look good? Does this sound good? Not that I'm correcting them, but they just want somebody else to look it over, make sure a period's right. And sometimes it comes to that kind of stuff. I'll go see Dr. Keys to help out a little bit with the grammar and things like that. But I think that demonstrates I'm an effective communicator.
Thank you. Tell us about an instance where you have been an effective champion for public schools.
In my role as a special ed supervisor, I had the pleasure of being the Northeast Tennessee's representative on the TASI board, Tennessee Association of Administrators of Special Education. I'm not going to say it's a great honor, but they picked me to do it. And we go about advocating for public education. Been to the state board meetings to advocate for that. They have a summer conference. We used to have a summer conference where we talked about legislative things, and they had a winter conference that we went and we would meet, and I presented at that conference. I have sat in on panels where we discuss public education, and you know, those are things that we strive to get the word out. I also do sit in on EPPs, the educational providers, the colleges that come and want us to hire their students. I've sat in on interviews with them and critiqued their students and their interview skills, and have really championed, you know, what it takes to be a good, effective educator, especially when it comes to if you want to work for Washington County, Tennessee. So.
Thank you. Cite an instance in your current position that demonstrates your ability to build confidence in the schools.
You know, I've already talked about, you know, being the public information officer, being out there, having that ability to talk to parents. And really that was honed through years of working in special ed. If you have any idea of what special education deals with, and sometimes it's very emotional, sometimes very contentious meetings where you're sitting down with people who are upset. They don't understand why their child can't learn. They don't think the school's responsive enough. So you have to go in and you sit down and you have to talk to these people, get to know them, and let them understand we've got what's best in mind for your student. Here's how we're going to work to get your student caught up. And you know, you're asking for a little bit of blind faith sometimes. You're basically convincing them that, hey, I know you're upset, I know you're worried, but we got this, and we're going to do what's right by your child. And I think that's been really powerful. And another thing I think that I like to do, some of the people in this room let me know if they're staring daggers at me, but I like to spread that wealth, that love about, and have them talk about what's going on in their programs. I've got a lot of news media people, they'll email me or text me, hey, can you talk about this? And if it's in my wheelhouse, I don't mind to talk about it, but if they want to know what's going on in secondary, I'll call Dr. Keys and say, hey, I've got an interview for you set up. I've done that with a lot of the administrators, because I think it's important that the community sees that our people are doing the right work, and that they're not worried or afraid to get in front of a camera or talk to a reporter and say, these are the things that we're doing that's really, really good in Washington County schools. Unfortunately, if things aren't going great, I usually take that bullet. I don't mind to sit in front of a camera and say, hey, we've made a mistake, we've messed up, we're going to do better next time. But to get that positive message out there, I like for the people to talk about what they know. So if that means the food service director has to get out there in front of a camera and talk to people, then we'll do that.
Thank you. Mr. Jarrod?
Okay, sir. Think of a problem that was brought to you recently. What was the problem and how did you handle it?
My role right now, and honestly, even as special ed supervisor, there's a lot of problems brought to me. And I take that as a sign of confidence from the staff, that they have faith that they can bring things to me and we can work together to get a solution. A lot of the things I probably can't talk about, so being in the HR department, there's a lot of things that have happened that is confidential and things like that. But one of the bigger things I've had a chance to do, we were having, it might seem simple, it might seem like that's not such a big problem, but to the people and the teachers that were in the building, it was a big problem. And it involves Lamar and Grandview schools. They used to be 8:15 schools. You start at 8:15, and we were really, and which means you got out at 3:15. So we were really jammed up getting buses back to those two schools to take the kids home. So kids got out of school at 3:15. They were sitting in a bus hall till 3:45, 4 o'clock, and teachers were having to stay over to watch the kids. The kids were bouncing off the walls, and they were just like, I cannot get the buses there any faster. They've got to take the high school kids home. And so we had 3 or 4 different bus loads. They were sitting in those schools, and the principals were just like, it's always been this way. So, and I'll probably say this again, it's one of my least favorite phrases is, we've always done it this way. My other one is, it is what it is, because I always like to say, it is what we make it. And so we sat down with the principals and talked about, well, what's the solution? How can we get the buses there? I can't get them there any earlier. And the solution turned out to be really simple. We just pushed the start time back 15 minutes. So instead of starting at 8:15, they started at 8:30. Instead of letting out at 3:15, let out at 3:30. So instead of being in a bus hall for 30 minutes, 45 minutes, we cut that down to 15 minutes, 30 minutes, or usually it's about 15 minutes. Simple problem. Not everybody was super happy about it when it first happened, but we made the decision what's best. And I think those of you who know me, I do my best to build a consensus between all the stakeholders. But ultimately, eventually, decisions got to be made. The kids were getting in trouble, discipline referral after discipline referral. The IAs, they were working beyond their job duties, their time. The teachers working beyond their time, and we made a simple adjustment, and I think it's worked out really well. So bringing everybody together, and I think that was an effective way to handle that issue.
Thank you. Tell us about the most important decision you've made recently and explain how you involve the people who would be directly affected by the decision.
Again, there are a lot of things I probably could have wrote down here. I don't know if every decision I make is important. I guess it depends who you ask and who's involved, right? Everybody's issue is important to them. But one of the things I think, and I'll be honest with you, Mr. Riddle, this is something I'm proud of because I've worked with a lot of different people, and I think it really turned out really well. I was a special ed supervisor, just kind of doing my own thing, and the previous director had an opening upstairs, and she basically pulled me aside one day and said, "You're coming upstairs to work in the human resources department." She's the boss. "Yes, ma'am, I'm coming." So I went up there, and one of the things that I'm still tasked with, kind of help oversee the transportation department. They have a transportation supervisor, but that person's really working on the mechanic schedule, the bus schedules, making sure the buses are running. Somebody to help with some logistics and some community support and to get a positive vibe out there. That was part of my role. Dr. Gillis used to do that. I guess he did it for many years. First thing I noticed as we were going through this is we were having trouble making sure all of our routes were covered, and people were just like not wanting to do, if we needed them to double up, which means maybe they drive a bus to Boone and then they go home. "Hey, can you drive the bus to Boone and then go on to Ridgeview and get those kids?" They really didn't want to do it. I'm like, I couldn't understand it. What's the problem with that? And then when I talked to finance department, talked to some of the bus drivers, the first run, they made about $59 a run, right? So if you drive the kids to Boone, you make $59. Well, how the pay system was set up, if they did a second run, you got $3. So they're doing 2 runs, and one you're getting $59. The second one they were getting $3. And I like the rest of them, I'm like, well, how's that happen? That doesn't make any sense at all to me. And what they say, it's how we've always done it. It's like, well, that's just ridiculous. And so what we did, talked to the finance director, talked to the transportation people, and what we figured out, if we up the pay for some of those drivers for that second run, they would gladly do it. And by taking care of the second run by the one driver, we paid them about $25 extra to do the second run. So you're looking at, well, I'll just round this up. So you're paying $60 for one run and $25 more for the second run. So you're about $85 a day, right? Well, if you have a bus driver driving the first route at $60, another bus driver driving the other route for $60, you're paying $120. So we save money by incentivizing these people to drive that second route. Now again, is that a huge problem? I don't know. But for the people that were driving the buses, it was a big thing. And it was a way for us to say, hey, I don't know what happened before this. We value you. We want you here. We want you driving for us. And it's important that you understand this. And so it wasn't much of an issue to get the extra money. And I think it worked out really well. I think the bus drivers really appreciate it. I know the current transportation supervisor, he's really a fan of it because it helped out with not having enough bus drivers. So, again, we involved all the people in that. And from the bus drivers I've spoken to since then and during that time, they're just very thankful that they got that extra money to do that extra work.
Thank you.
Criteria 3, Dr. Evans. What avenues are you open for you to listen to the concerns of employees, students, parents, and the community? And the second part of that question, how would you plan to have time available for all involved stakeholders?
I think it's important you listen to your stakeholders, whether it's the students, the teachers, the administration, the parents, the community members as a whole. One thing I'm not a giant fan of is people will come up here and say, well, I have an open door policy. I don't know what that means because I can come talk to you whenever I need to, but if I come to you with a problem and you don't help me solve it, what does it matter that I can come see you anytime? So I think it's important that you make the discernment that when you talk to people, if they're taking time out of their day to come talk to you, it's an issue for them. It may not be an issue for everybody, but it's an issue for them. So having that empathy and then taking that time. Again, talked about the teacher educator survey results. The administrators have access to that. The students have a student survey to look at that data so that you can proactively address some of those issues. A lot of times you don't know somebody's having a problem until they bring it to you. A lot of times people don't want to come see the boss. They're worried. Hey, if I bring this up, am I going to kick a hornet's nest? And now everybody's mad and I'm in trouble. So that doing it anonymously, that's incumbent upon the administration and the people in this office to look at that data so that we can proactively get out there and address those concerns. Part of my plan would be to have a parent advisory group where it would be just the director of schools and parents, so that we could have honest conversations, not an opportunity for everybody just to complain what's not going right, but for people to bring up, hey, these are some issues we're having, and from a parent aspect, how are we going to solve these? Those of you who know me know I put 3 kids through this school system. I've got 2 grandkids right now at Ridgeview. I'm invested in this school system, and we do a really good job. And as a parent, I had an expectation if I took something to the principal, it was addressed. And I think all of our parents should have that expectation. I think our teachers should have that expectation. Now, don't confuse having it addressed with meaning you get your way. You don't always get your way. I wish I got my way, or I would have won the Mega Millions jackpot the other day. I didn't get the right numbers, right? But having a voice, a lot of times people's frustration comes from not getting their way. It's not about not getting their way. It comes from they're not being listened to. They don't feel heard. So that's where their voices come from. That's why you guys get phone calls from parents, because they say, can't get anybody to talk to me at the school. Nobody's addressing this. My expectation is issues and concerns are addressed. If people call me, I take care of stuff. If the principals call me, if a teacher calls me, I had a teacher email me this weekend. She's having trouble getting into her TN Compass account. Changed her email address. Honestly, not a big deal, simple fix, but to her at that moment in time, it was a big deal. She emailed me on a Saturday night. I can't get into my TN Compass. So I just emailed her back. Here's what you need to do. Here's the email address. Send me another email today. Thank you so much, taken care of. So knowing that they can come talk to me is great, but knowing that they come talk to me and I'll do something about it and try to take an action for it, I think that's powerful. And I think, those avenues are out there. I had a lot of county commissioners today at lunch, and they came and they just want to talk. They wanted to talk to me and ask me ideas about that, and seeing them from Hugh committees and budget committees and just out and about in Jonesboro and out and about in other areas, I think that's key. I want people to come talk to me. I told the principals, I told the teachers, I find joy in my job by helping other people. If you bring me a problem and I can help you solve it and you're tickled to death, that makes me happy. I wouldn't say I'm a people pleaser, but it pleases me to help people. So.
Second question, give an example of when you've changed your mind and taken a different course of action as a result of listening to others.
Couple different instances, Mr. Hammond. In IEP meetings, we come in and you think you know a situation, and you think these are the things we need to do to help this kid, and then you get into this meeting and you start listening to the parents, start listening to the teachers, and you may say, I thought we were going to go this direction, but we're going to change track and go this way. So I think having an open mind, again, I don't have an ego in this, and I would never tell you I have all the answers. I've got ideas, I've got suggestions, but I'm always open to go one way or another. An instance, when we were first rolling out our RTI process, the schools would say, Dr. Ebbs, I think this is how we're going to do this. And at first I thought, you're the principal, and it's good. That's how you want to do it. And a couple of them were wanting to hold their RTI time to the very last part of the day, the last 30 minutes. And as we looked at the data and the scheduling and how productive that time was and how it fit into the rest of the schedule for the schools, had to change my mind on that. We had to go back and work to where we embedded that RTI time within each school schedule.
Describe the significant change that you initiated in your district and tell us what evidence you have shown in it was a positive change, and how did you build support for that change?
I'm so glad you asked that question, Mr. Irvin, because I know you wanted to ask this question, because my answer is the answer to the question you want to ask. And one of the bigger things I did when I got into the HR department is down in special ed for the longest time, Dr. Belcher and I, we'd bring candidates in We'd interview them, and we'd say, we like you, you're going to go to Lamar, you're gonna go CDC Lamar. And we'd call the principal up and say, hey, you're going to Lamar. You got this teacher coming to you from Lamar. And kind of going back to what Mr. Hammond was asking, how I changed my mind on that, while I thought we were doing everybody a favor down in Special Ed, when I got to HR, they didn't like that. They wanted a voice in that. So we have systematically changed our hiring process. How do we do this? Right now, applicants put applications into our office. Ms. Riddle goes through them, makes sure they have everything documented. They have their background check, they have their transcripts, they have their teaching license, and then we pull a list. If Ms. Hughes has a position for a 6th grade ELA teacher at Boones Creek, we'll pull the applicants that have that license, that they can teach that. They're licensed to teach that. And then we'll tell Jordan, hey, Ms. Hughes, come in, here are the applicants. You lead through them, and then we'll set up interviews. And they know now how we do it. They may have somebody out of the HR department. I'm always available. Hey, you want me to sit in? Just let me know. I'll sit in. Don't want me to sit in? I don't have to sit in. I've got other things that I can sit in and do. I'll do that. You have an administrator. You have the people that this teacher might be working with. You have the other ELA teachers in your building. You have the other 6th grade team members in there, and they do the interview. Why? Because they're the person going to have to be working with that. What I feel might be a great fit for Boones Creek Elementary School, it may not be. So we gave them that voice. And additionally, in the interview, when we were talking with the principals, trying to build some kind of consensus how we were going to do that, we started looking at the questions we were asking our applicants. And honestly, they some of them were good, some of them were not so good. And took it to the principals. You tell me what questions you want to ask. It's your building. And so we got away from how questions like, how do you feel about reading, teaching reading to your students? You can answer that, I feel great about it, or I'm just okay. Those are a lot of the answers we were getting. But then we started asking a question like, tell me what your ELA literacy block looks like. What do you do during your writer's workshop? We started asking really, I think, tough but fair questions. And that helped our principals really find the people that were going into their building, that they were knowledgeable about what they wanted to do, that they had a voice in hiring these people. And I know it's a positive change because the principals are tickled to death that we're doing it this way. And I know the support was there because we involved everybody. The teachers are thrilled to be able to sit in on the interviews. And when we did principal interviews this summer, I had teachers. When we were looking at Ridgeview, we were looking at Fall Branch. We had teachers from that building sit in and ask questions for the actual administrator that we were going to place at that building. And in years past, I didn't have a say-so in that, but I think they just kind of came in, talked to people, and somebody hired them, and they went out and they were principal of that building. But we really turned the heat up on them. And, in our hiring process, the very last thing, after Dr. Flannery, the director, says, yep, we're hiring these people, they come back to me. And Heather gets the contract ready, and we sign the contract, and I give my 2 cents and tell them, here's what Washington County is all about. And I tell them, some of you may have been downstairs hearing me tell the teachers this, we're a really good school system. We're not perfect, but we're a good school system. And why are we such a good school system? We do 2 things. We do 2 things really, really well. First, we hire really good people. And second, we train them up. You come out of a college of education, you have some knowledge, but you don't really know what it's like to be a teacher. So we train them up. We provide professional development to them. We have worked really hard with our principals to be instructional leaders in their buildings where they're able to go into a teacher's classroom and say, here are some things that you can do to be better at this. Here are some things that you can do to be better at that. Go see this teacher who will show you how to group kids better. Go see this person. Or maybe we might plan an individual professional development. Maybe we've got 10 teachers who need help on how to ask better questions. And we might pull an instructional coach who will put together an impromptu PD session for those 10 teachers and say, here are some things that you can do to ask better questions. Pre-plan those. Do it with forethought. So that whole interview process and how we're involving people and the questions we ask, that's something that I think has been a very positive, significant change, and it's really helped move us forward in terms of how we get people in our school system.
How do you keep up with research and an incentive that many drive change?
Again, I mentioned I'm a strong, an avid reader. One of the people that I really pay attention to is a gentleman. His name's John Hattie, Hattie. If you ever want to look it up, he has a website, a book series. It's called Visible Learning. And not to get in the weeds too much with this, but if you look at one person's study, that's one person's study. It might have 8, 10 people involved in it. So that's called, you do an analysis of that. Well, what John Hattie's program does is he takes, if you're looking, my dissertation's in RTI, so if you take my dissertation, that's one study. You can analyze one group of people that was involved in that one study. He does what's called a meta-analysis, and so he finds all the studies that have to do with RTI or this or that, and then he can project what's called level of effects, which means what are things that have the most effect when you talk about student engagement, student achievement, and some things that have been hard for people to swallow. Like, we used to be a huge champion in Washington County of retention. Kid can't do this, kid can't do that, we'll just retain them, we'll just hold them back. The effect size of that is I think it's a 0.1. And if you have a really strong effect size, you're 1 point something, you're over that. It's a 0.1, which basically means that doesn't work. The effect of it doesn't work. So that's the type of data I want. I want to know what works, not what we've always done, what's the easiest thing to do. So keeping up with things like that, with people on the cutting edge, involving kids in their own grading, letting them look at their own rubric and score that and judge themselves, very strong, very powerful, has a very high effect size. That's the type of stuff we need to be doing. I don't know all that stuff. I didn't do those studies, but I can read that book and I can see that, and I know that I can direct other people to that and say, hey, this looks really good. We're doing something like this. Let's build on this. Let's move forward with this, because the data shows it's effective. So the research, I like to listen to our principals. Matt Combs turned me on to a book called Teach Like a Pirate, a great book. Dr. Keys lent me a book called Principal. It's about building teams and culture between principals and how principals can support themselves. Some of you may know this, some of you may not. Being a school principal is a super lonely job for those people. Hear it all the time. They're by themselves. Nobody knows what they're going through because they stand in their own shoes. There's nobody else there. They're the bottom line in that school. So being able to formulate mentors between them and groups between them so they have somebody to lean on, that's the type of stuff I'm interested in working on. So that's how I keep up. I mean, there's people out there, I'm not big on just generalized statements of, feel good this and feel good that. I want data, because again, I think if we are deliberate with how we're helping our teachers reach our students, that is what will make them feel the best about themselves and in the classroom.
All right. Okay. Describe how you've led a school or system in creating a vision and building support to accomplish that vision.
One of the first issues I had to tackle when I took over as a special ed supervisor was the federal government, the state government started having a push for what's called inclusion. And basically what they wanted our special ed students in regular classes more than what they were. When I first came to Washington County, if you had an IEP and you had a reading disability or you had a learning disability, when all the other kids were doing reading with the 4th grade teacher, you came to me and I did my stuff. And we worked on skills and we worked on deficit areas. And that's how that was. You might come to me for 30 minutes, 45 minutes, so you came to me. So you were missing regular ed 4th grade stuff because you're coming to me in reading, and then you were missing 4th grade level stuff when you were coming to me for math. And what we found was while we were doing a decent job working on their deficit areas, they weren't getting the regular education content. They weren't listening to that teacher give the content. Special ed teachers, jack of all trades, they know their stuff. I know they know their stuff because we did the PD, we did the work to teach them how to work on deficit areas. But they're not content level specialists. They're not content level experts. Classroom teacher is. So if you look at that and say, okay, I'm pulling them out of 7th grade math, and they're coming to me, and they can't add and subtract, so I'm going to work on, you need to add and subtract. But in those days, 7th grade was learning about percentiles, fractions, ratios, and they never heard that because they weren't in the class to do it. So what we had to do was have a vision. How are we going to include these kids? How are we going to push them back in? And why I say push back in is because we called that system where they left the class and came to special ed, we called that pull out. And now we had to have a vision. How are we going to push them back into the regular class? And I'll be honest, it wasn't easy because it took a lot of effort for us to get the special ed teachers on board, because they were like, I'm supposed to be working on deficits, now I'm going to go into this teacher's class and be in this teacher's class. And then the regular ed teachers were like, well, wait a minute, I'm working on ratios and this kid can't add 2 + 2, so how am I going to reach that? So we had a vision and a plan for how we're going to support these people, how we're going to push these kids back in so that they're getting the content knowledge they need all the time while we're working on their deficit areas. And I'm not tooting my horn, I'll toot Washington County's all day long. We were recognized for how we were doing that. State level, other school systems calling, wanting to come see how we were doing, what we were doing. And it's just a testament to the dedication of our teachers to do that. So.
Okay. How have you used planning and goal setting to improve your school system?
One of the ways that we've done that, when we talk about special ed, RTI, to use data to drive what we're doing in the classroom. We had to have a plan for how we're going to do that. How are we going to start being more, again, deliberate in how we're doing what we're doing? And the only way to do that in education is you have to use data. You have to understand where the kids are, what they're doing, what they need to be doing. So we went around and listened to people at the State Department about creating what they call data teams. And once a week, once every 2 weeks, grade levels will meet, and they'll bring the student data, and they'll list that out and say, here are the kids that are struggling in reading. They might be on tier 2, they might be in tier 3. Here are the things we're doing with them. And they sit down as a group of professionals and come up with plans for how they're going to address these deficit issues. So we plan that out, how we're going to do it, and then we set goals for not only for what the teachers are going to do. Every 2 weeks, we're going to progress monitor. Every 4 weeks, we're going to come back and assess where these students are. But we were deliberate in how we were helping these teachers use data. We bought formative assessment programs for them to use to see on a right now time frame where that kid is, so that we could chart progress instead of just using what we felt. Well, I think this or I think that. We use data. And that was something that was very deliberate on our end to use data and to plan for that and to set goals for that. I work with principals on their growth plans. One of the things that when Dr. Flannery took over and we talked about working with our principals, talked to him about forming up teams of central office personnel to go out and work with principals. It's important for people to understand that. I understand when team first came out, the way we evaluate teachers, it was negative. I'll be 100% honest, I've told people from the State Department, y'all rolled this out awful. It was just a bad rollout, left a bad taste in everybody's mouth about how it was done, because all of a sudden people thought they were being subjectively evaluated and they were worried about somebody's opinion or their feelings coming into how they judge them as a teacher. But we've been very deliberate with coming back to how we are doing this with our teachers, in that it's a growth model. So we set about working with our principals to help them become better instructional leaders, help them grow as instructional leaders so they can go back to the classroom and help their teachers grow as instructional leaders, and take that bite out of it, that fear of somebody's coming into my classroom and all of a sudden they're going to judge me on this one day at this one time. I think we've done a really good job in the last 4 or 5 years of making sure our teachers don't have that level of apprehension. Most people have, your boss comes in and says, hey, Mr. Flannery, I want you to do your job today. So, hope you do a good job, That's stressful. But we've taken a lot of that off of our teachers because I think they've really come to understanding, we're just coming in to help you. We want you to be better. Why do we want you to be better? For our kids. And so, those are some things that we planned, we goal set, and I think that's work we still do today. I think our principals really appreciate the level of time and patience that we've had with them to help build them up as instructional leaders. And I don't know if I'll get a chance to address this. If I say it once, I'll say it again if I have to. But we've been very deliberate in the last 4 or 5 years, especially since I've been in the HR department, that we are trying to ensure that our principals and administrators are instructional leaders. They spend so much of their time being managers of that building. And I get that. You have to manage the building. Are the lights on? Is the toilet clogged? Is the lunch line running smooth? Do we have the tickets ready for the basketball game and all that stuff? It's management stuff. Their number one objective, their number one expectation for me is they're an instructional leader. And we've really taken the time and the effort to make sure that our administrators are instructional leaders. And I think for the most part, you can look across and see the people we have in our buildings right now are strong, effective instructional leaders. And I think, and I looked at the Tennessee Educator Survey results. Again, what Jarrod thinks, I care what I think. Some people may not, but our teachers think that because they rated that on their educator survey. And the question, paraphrasing here, my school administrator is a strong instructional leader. And I think it was somewhere between 85 and 90% answered that either, it was like agree or strongly agree. So that tells me that the teachers see we're doing the right work. So.
Very good. Number 3, how can diverse community groups be united for a common cause?
I think you need to have your pulse on the community. You need to be involved in what's going on in the community. You need to listen to your stakeholders. You have to build those relationships and maintain those relationships. Again, you have to have open lines of communication. They have to know they can call and talk to you. They have to understand that. But more than that, being able to talk to you, if you're trying to build support for something, you have to be, you have to have a rationale for why you're doing what you're doing. You have to know why you're doing something. And then you have to be able to articulate that. You have to be able to explain it to people. And when you do something and you explain it to people, even if they don't like it or don't agree with it, once you've taken the time to explain it to them, they're usually okay with it. I had some people when we changed the time at Lamar and Grandview, they called me and it was the end of everything. We moved that time 15 minutes. When I explained it to them, why we were doing what we were doing, they understood it. Somebody finally explained it to them, just out of the blue. What do you mean 15 minutes late? They called in, it was explained to them. Again, they didn't totally agree with it, but they understood the rationale. That goes a long way to building support. When people understand why you want to do what you want to do, they get that. Another thing that really comes to mind, and we did that summer feeding program this summer. Sorry. We had a lot of church groups step up. I'm not tooting my horn. I organized those people to go out and do what they did. They did that out of the kindness of their hearts. Didn't think I'd break up over that. So, building community support, it's out there. It's incumbent upon us to hone in on that and target that. So, I think that's how you do it.
Thank you.
Talk slow, Mr. Master. I need to drink water.
Thank you.
Give him a drink.
Take you a break.
We ain't got but 15 more questions, so you're all right.
Under the time, not too
You're
bad.
good. You're good. I've got 3. My first one, explain how you would develop a school system budget and tell us who you would involve and how you would involve them.
Budget drives what we do. We understand that money's important. The way I view this is you need to have input from your schools. You need to hear from your schools. I told the teachers earlier downstairs, my goal, my plan is to have a leadership team in the school system. And it will be principals, some CO staff, and we're going to meet and talk about issues. But beyond that, my expectations for the principals, and I told them this earlier today, our leadership team is only going to be as strong and as effective as your school-based leadership team is. So my expectation is I'm going to come and I want to see your leadership team. I want you to tell me who's on it, why they're on it, what they bring to the table, and what you're going to do moving forward. That's going to give the teachers a voice because they know what they need. Yeah, if we need buses, we understand we need buses. If we need a new roof, yeah, we need a new roof. If we have to buy so much in textbooks, we get that. But sometimes schools need individual stuff, and teachers want to be heard. Administrators want to be heard. So I don't know exactly what Lamar needs. I don't know exactly what Ridgeview needs, but they do. So I want to bring them to the table and start at the school level. Tell me what you guys need. It might be what everybody needs, and we can all come together and see that. It might be something different. But once they tell me what they need to have rationale. Tell me why it's important to you. So involve them on the front end. Of course, we'll work with the finance director. How are we going to get this money, move it to here? We need to work with the county commission. They are the funding body. But again, when we talk about that, my experience so far, and it's limited with the county commission, is if you come in and you can tell them what you want to do, why you want to do it, and how it's going to be a positive, effective thing for our school system, more times than not, they'll get on board with it. You guys are under a ton of pressure. You get phone calls, you have constituents, they want to tell you what they think. They're under a ton of pressure. There's some people who don't have kids in the school system and they don't want to pay any more taxes. There are other people who have 5 kids in this and they want everything we can get. So having that collegial, empathetic relationship with our stakeholders so that they understand, again, they're being listened to. Again, you're not going to get everything you want. Nobody gets everything they want, but if we can come together and have some type of plan to move forward, prioritize the things that need to be prioritized, I think that's the way you build your budget. And you need to listen to the people, have expectations that they're going to bring stuff to you with a rationale, but also be realistic about what we need to do between that and versus what we want to do. And if we do everything we need to do and there's some money left over, we have our wants and things like that, then we can address that. So that's my plan for how we're going to do that.
Thank you. The next question. Our board is dependent on the county commission to fund the budget. How would you propose to gain their support of the budget? And the second part, how would you involve them in the budget development?
Again, I think Mr. Masters having a sound rationale for how we want to do what we want to do, that goes a long way. I think also in terms of the county commission, I think the school board, the school system in general, we need to have a good solid plan. I know the school system has a 5-year plan, and I think that's commendable. We need to have a plan. We're here, we need to get to there, how are we going to do that? I think what would help us with the county commission is to break down those goals into actionable steps with time frames. If we're going to say we want to be more equitable in how we're going to provide our CTE or options to our 7th and 8th graders, and it might take a little bit of money to do it this way, if we come to them and say, here's our plan, and if we get the money for this, and at this point in time, this is what's going to be happening. At this point in time, this is what's going to be happening. The end result of that is we're going to meet our goal. And it could be one of the things I talk with the principals about is giving more flexibility to our 7th and 8th graders in the related arts class. We've got art teachers out there they teach art. But what if during the day for 7th and 8th graders, we gave them an opportunity to teach graphic design to their 7th and 8th graders? Where we've changed that up a little bit. It might take a little bit of money to plan that out, to provide that to them, but we have a plan. I think we need to be focusing on becoming trauma-informed schools. Ms. McKinney is back there, at least I think she is, and as our grant writer, there are grants out there that we can use to become trauma-informed schools, so we can look at the whole child. Again, that's a big push from the state. Look at the whole child, look at the whole child. You can say it all you want to, but until you actually do something about it, you come up with a plan, and we're going to move to that by doing this, 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 and this. It's all just lip service, and I don't like lip service. I don't like people to tell me we're going to do this and it never happens. I want somebody to say we're going to do this. We're going to take these steps to get there. It's probably going to take this long. It might take longer. It might be a little harder than we thought. But then I feel better that they're listening and they're formulating that plan. And you involve them in those budget decisions. Another thing we talked about with them is the propane buses. We took a plan to them. We got money back from a grant. We want you to spend more money on the front end for these propane buses. You're going to pay a little bit more on the front end. We've got a grant money coming in that's going to offset the cost. Plus, we're going to save some money on maintenance, maybe on fuel, on wear and tear. And you presented that to them, and they were, okay, that sounds great to us. You're going to save us money, and you have a rationale for that. Now, if we just went up there and said, hey, we're going to remove the propane, green, wave the green flag and all that, probably wouldn't have gone for it, but we came with data. We came with why we want to do it. And, I told the county commissioners today, that's in different people's wheelhouse. Ms. Jones is concerned about the budget, but she's also, she's green friendly. She wants to move to greener technology. So that's right in her wheelhouse. She liked that idea. Some of the others are much more concerned on what the tax base is, what's the tax rate, how are we going to pay for this, can you save us money? We killed 2 birds with one stone, and we got a lot of buy-in from everybody on the county commission because we're reaching them into what matters to them. So there are ways to do that. I think people, again, they just want to know why and how. And if you can explain it well, we're all in this for our kids. We're their biggest employee, right? We kind of, they pay for us to function, and they have an expectation we're going to do the right thing. So we bring it to them. Here are the right things we want to do, and we're going to move forward. Support us in this. It only behooves them to help out their own constituents and their families. So.
And my last one, what steps would you take to ensure school funds are spent wisely and accounted for properly and in compliance with state and federal mandates?
I think we need to make sure we continue to build our ongoing capacity between our school administrators and the school level bookkeepers, and making sure we're keeping track of our funds. They need to understand the state and federal policies. Of course, you want to work very closely with your finance director. I think Mr. Hill does a fantastic job. He dots the I's, crosses the T's, and we need to make sure we have that open line of communication between all those people. Again, sometimes people are afraid to speak up because they're afraid somebody think, well, they don't know what they're doing, or wow, they just opened a can of worms, and we don't want to have to address that they might have done something wrong. But even part of the principal's evaluation, part of it is financial stuff, and they have a rubric that they're basically evaluated on, saying how well they're managing the finances of that school building. One of the things that I would like to get back to enforcing or put into place, we have a board policy. I'm reading it because I didn't memorize it. It's 2.701 financial reports and records. It basically says every month, finance director and the school's finance person, the principals, finance director of schools, we look over their finances. Basically, they give us a tally sheet an old accounting sheet. This is the money we have at the start of the month. These are the things we spent on. This is how much money, and we make sure that stuff balances out. I think that's something that we may want to look to make sure that we're doing those type of things, so that we are good stewards of the taxpayers' money, so that they have confidence when we need more money, we want to ask for more money, we're able to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Adams. I've got 3 fantastic questions here to ask you on criterion 7. Probably the most important questions you'll be asked tonight. How would you work with your board to be effective and respected by the community?
I think what we need to make sure is we have a very strong, open line of communication, and that communication for you all needs to be proactive. You need to know stuff on the front end. You don't need to be blindsided by things. Sometimes things happen at the drop of a hat, and you might get a phone call 5 minutes after something happened, and those things happen. But if we've got something going on next week, and it's going to be a big deal to the parents or to some teachers, I think you need to be informed about that so that you're aware of it. I think to be respected by the community, we need to get positive messages out there. I think the director of schools, and I'm not doing the pom-pom thing, but I think you need to be the cheerleader for their school system. You need to be out front, a positive voice, whether you're in the newspaper, you're on the radio, or just in front of a group of parents, talking about how good things are in our school system. And I think that helps build respect for the school board from the community, that things are going well. Honestly, I think that the vast majority of our stakeholders feel that Washington County Schools is a great school system. Unfortunately, they don't communicate with us for that. I've worked for years in Washington County Schools. I have one parent card from a special ed parent thanking me for something I did. One. I couldn't even tell you how many phone calls I got blasting me or emails saying, hey, you guys are failing at this, you're failing at that. So, having that community support, people acknowledging that what you're doing is good and positive, I think that's incumbent upon not only the director, but I think it's incumbent upon the board. We have a united front that we're out there and we're talking about the positive things going on in our school system. I think that goes a long way. Like I said, the feeding program, churches were just blown away that they were able to help us. And I'm just like, you guys are helping us. We need to feed these kids. And they're just like, over and over, Dr. Adams, thank you so much for giving us this opportunity to feed these kids. And it's like, okay, thanks, you're welcome. But they did us a favor. But they really had nothing but positive things to say about how, and they talked to school board, they mean the school system, how the school board just really gave them an opportunity to do this outreach and feed kids. And I don't know if any of them reached out to you, but they were very, very complimentary of us letting them help feed our kids this summer. Mike Warren, the pastor at Tri-Cities Baptist, was very instrumental in putting all this together. He and I worked. I got a spreadsheet of who's coming from this church on this day, this school, delivering this food. It was intense. It's a lot of planning, a lot of work to get these people out there. But they did it. God bless them. They did it. So that's very positive on the board.
Number 2, explain what you have done to build and maintain a good relationship with your board.
I think you would say I'm always available. Some of you texted me, you call me. If I don't do it, answer it right then, and text right back, I get right back to you. I think in my role now, if I'm the director in my role then, it's a disservice to you if I'm not honest and I'm not frank. If you ask me my opinion or what I think, I'm going to tell you. Now, you may not take it, but my expectation is you want my input. You've put me in this chair to be the director of schools, to run this school system. You want my input from it. So I'll always be honest and I'll always be frank. And that's just my style. And I used to say when we did restraint training for some of our teachers, and a lot of it was verbal de-escalation techniques. And, you know, we did grapple and put people in holds, and they'd have to, you know, show them how to break out of it and that kind of stuff. But one of the things I always told them is, you know, if a kid's saying something to you, because kids love to insult teachers, especially behavior kids. You know, they'll make fun of your hair, they'll make fun of your clothes. And if you take that personal, that's on you. Because it shouldn't be personal. It's a kid acting out, he's got an issue, he's trying to deal with it, and he's probably just learned to push people away. That's on you if you take that personal. So, you know, if you come and call me and say, hey, Jarrod, you know, that decision you made, that was just not good, and here's why I don't think it. If I take that personal, that's on me. I shouldn't take that personal. We're in this together. And I'm saying that to say it should be reciprocal. If you call me and say, hey, what do you think about this? I'm just going to tell you, this is what I think. If I don't have an answer, I'll get an answer and get back to you. I've talked to these people who I think will be invested in this answer, and here's what I think we need to do. And I think that is what you want from somebody. You know, I'm not going to just tell you stuff because I think it's going to make you happy. Because ultimately, we want to do what's right by kids. And you know, you're talking 9 different people, 9 different backgrounds, all trying to come together to make one decision. You know, I think understanding that, and again, can't talk about it enough, you have to have a rationale for why you want to do what you do. You know, we all have, most of us have children, and hey, why did you do that? Because. And you know, they can't explain to you, and you get mad at that. Well, you know why you did it, and that kind of stuff. Or conversely, your kids would get mad at you. You know, Dad, you know, why are we going over here today at this store? I gotta go shopping because, and you know, they didn't like that. But if you tell people why, I think that goes a long way. So I think that's how I'm going to build that and maintain that good relationship with you guys. If you ask me questions, tell you the truth, tell you what I think, and tell you why I think it.
Very well. Number 3, how do you communicate with board members between regular meetings?
I would assume that when you have questions and concerns, you're going to reach out to me. And again, I would hope that a lot of times I would have the answer, the information right on hand. But if I don't, again, I don't have an ego. If I don't know, I say, well, you know, Mr. Flynn, let me make a few phone calls. I'll find that out. I'll get back to you. So being available to you on a day-to-day basis, I think that's important. But harking back to the being proactive, I think, you know, it's probably a tradition that you get a weekly email from the director, and I am not privy to those. So if these things are happening, then I applaud the director who's doing this. But I think you would see in that email things that are going on in the school system. You know, if Dr. Keys has something big going on in secondary, I'm going to ask her, hey, send me that in an email, and I might copy and paste it. You know, put quotations from Dr. Keys. This is the thing that's going on. But be as proactive as I can in making sure you're informed of what's going on, because a lot of times I know you guys get phone calls and people expect you to have the answer. And if I can make sure you have the answer on the front end so you can answer that, I think that only, again, goes back to having confidence in the school system that the board members, and it's not that you don't, but if you don't want to give that impression that you don't know what's going on. So that's my job, to make sure you're as informed as possible. And if something big comes up, I'm not saving it for the Friday email. It might be a Tuesday afternoon text. Hey, you guys, this is what's going on. You know, we had a little fender bender with the bus the other day, and I know that went out pretty quick, you guys. As soon as I got here, I had trouble tying my tie and getting out of the house. I was making phone calls to make sure everybody's okay, get a drug test set up, make sure the doctor was going to be there, make sure that if there was ambulance needed, contact the school. Got here to tell Dr. Flannery, and we took off, went to the site to just make sure everything was okay. But you know, I think he communicated that as fast as he could with the information, and that's going to be my thing. I want to make sure you guys know as soon as I do. You know, hey, you know, Gray ran out of number 2 pencils today. I don't know that you need to know that. You know what I'm saying? If somebody calls and complains about that, I'll do a better job of letting you know they're out of number 2 pencils. But you know, if it's big stuff, I'll let you know on the front end. And I think that's important to you guys.
Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Adams, Mr. Fleener indicated that criteria 7 was probably the most important set of questions, and that's how you work with your school board, your bosses, and I don't disagree with that. However, I would submit that, and based on what you said earlier about having instructional leaders in your buildings and in your sites, this next set of questions have to do with your instructional leadership background and your academic background. So my first question is describe to us your experience in developing and implementing and evaluating instructional programs, including any in the CTE realm, that has had tangible improvements for educational outcomes for our students.
One of the things I'm really proud of, the work that I helped accomplish, is when I was special ed supervisor, one of the programs we run at the high school was our transition school work program. And basically, in a nutshell, what that program is, we have high school special education students who have a degree of cognitive abilities that basically precludes them from meeting the standards to get a high school diploma. So it's incumbent upon us to reach out to those students and figure out a plan. So the Transition School to Work program had been around for a while. And basically what the program is you develop job sites, relationships with outside organizations, and take the special education students to those so they can learn some type of job skill. When I took over as the special ed supervisor, one of the things I wanted to make sure I had a grip on was this Transition School to Work program. And honestly, when I went out to evaluate that program, it was not what it needed to be. There's a grant for that. We had a Transition School to Work counselor, basically the guy who was supposed to be over it. We had somebody who was like his quasi-secretary, and then we used the grant to fund job coaches. So these job coaches would take the special education students out to the job sites and help them learn a job skill. And evaluating that program, it was not very good, to be honest about it. What I found was where the kids were supposed to be doing the work, the job coaches were doing the work, because they just wanted to get that job done and get out and come back to school. So went to Dr. Belcher and said, hey, this is what I'm seeing. Here's what we're going to need to do. We're going to need to totally revamp this program. So we dismissed the Transition School to Work counselor and set about finding somebody to take over that program. We made the job coaches come back in and interview for the position, so that we made sure we got the right people in that position. There were some that were, this is years ago, so don't think this is yesterday or 2 years ago. This is 2005, 2006, somewhere around in there. They were literally sitting in a parking lot at Target with kids on the bus, because they were supposed to go work at Target. And they would go in for about 20, 30 minutes, and they'd go sit on the bus, they might go for lunch, and the kids were supposed to be there working for 2 to 3 hours. Now, remember, we're trying to get these kids a job skill so that maybe Target might hire them. Some of those kids, their job was to sort hangers. Put the XS's in this pile, the S's in this pile, and that's what they were learning to do. And our kids could do that. Some of the kids, we took them to Fuddruckers. It's no longer open, right? But we took them to Fuddruckers, and their job, clean the tables, fill the salt and pepper shakers, fill the ketchups, clean the table. They weren't doing that. The job coaches were going in, and they were banging that out, and coming back to school, yeah, we're done. But the kids weren't learning. So we revamped that program, had some new CDC teachers at Daniel Boone, just happenstance that those jobs came open. And one of the best things we did, we hired a young man, Jeremy May, teacher, has a teaching degree, history. Couldn't find a job. History in a high school is a hard job to find. And he was helping coach the boys, I think it was the boys basketball team at Boone at the time, and somebody brought his name to me. We brought him in and interviewed him and said, hey, we think you could do this. You have a heart for working with kids, and you kind of understand what it takes to set a plan of how you're going to build a program. So we set about how we're going to build this program. We went out, got the right job coaches to work with these students. We started implementing things in the classroom when they were freshmen and and sophomore, because you really couldn't go out until you're 17 years old. You could go out to work on a job site. So we started doing things in the classroom to get them ready to go out. We went out and we found better job sites for our students. We basically ran the cafeteria at ETSU from top to bottom. They were in the dish room, they were cleaning tables, continue to go to Fuddruckers, but we were teaching those kids those functional skills. Now what does all that have to do with what we're talking about? We saw the need, we implemented a plan, we went ahead and evaluated where we were, what we wanted to do. And I could talk forever about this because it's a really big accolade for Washington County. Jeremy May trains all the other TSTW programs, at least in this side of the state. Not all my doing, but we set about getting a good plan of action, and now he goes out. He goes to other places to show them what to do. Biggest thing that tickled me to death, Kingsport called probably about 4 or 5 years ago, and they said, hey, we hear you guys are just killing it with your transition school work program. Can we come? And now Jeremy went to the state, and they said, we need you to be a trainer. And he goes out and he trains other school systems how to set up an effective transition school work program. And it works. It's a great outlet for our students. Some of you may not know, we have our special ed kids until, it says 21, but if they're in school on September 1st and that's their 22nd birthday, we keep them all the way through to the end of that school year. And so that's a long time for us to teach them actionable job skills, to get them jobs. You know, they might live in assisted living where somebody else, you know, is taking the Dawn of Hope, is taking it, but they might be riding public transportation, but they're still going somewhere and getting a paycheck. We have a young lady that, I don't know if she still works at the Jonesboro Library, but we worked with her forever. And she worked at the Jonesboro Library downtown here, and she got paid to do that. And she was a graduate of the Transition School to Work program. You know, we've had kids that you know, our biggest accomplishment is if they do a job so well at that place when they graduate, they get hired, and that's the goal. And we have kids working at ETSU. They work in the cafeteria there, and they're getting paid to do that. So, you know, that's just very, I don't know, that's just something that we did that just was very successful. You know, I'm not taking any much credit for that. You know, we found Jarrod, we put the program in place, but it works.
Thank you. No, really good information. I wasn't aware of all that, so thank you for sharing that with us. Tell us 3 curricular or instructional improvements, if you can, that occurred as a result of your leadership. You obviously touched on one, if you've got some others. And what evidence do you have that there were improvements?
Well, 2 of them I've already talked about a little bit. The inclusion program, and you know, I told myself I really wasn't going to, I was going to try to spread this out, kind of show, you know, all the things I've had to do and be involved of. But when you start talking about curricular instructional improvements, that inclusion is a big one, because that really just flipped the script for our special ed kids. And it really did for the regular ed kids too, because they got to be mentors, they got to help students, they got to have those relationships with these kids. It's been very powerful. Talked a little bit about the RTI, where we still do a quasi pull-out during our tiered instruction, where the kids who are on grade level and moving forward, they go to tier 1 and they might be doing more grade level stuff. We got kids on grade 2 that we've identified deficit areas, so they might be coming out to the RTI person and then working on, you know, your reading decoding skills need some help, so we're going to work on that. And that's been really powerful. How do I know for the inclusion in the RTI? Our test scores are better. You know, you look at the data, you know, our test scores used to be really bad, especially for our special ed kids, because when you go take the TCAP, your reading decoding helps you on that. But if you're in a 6th grade, taking 6th grade science, you need to know the 6th grade science. And if you're not sitting in 6th grade science, you don't know the 6th grade science. So pushing that back out, that's really been effective for us. And the third thing I'll talk about, besides the inclusion in the RTI, is our involvement with the artisan teacher. And that's the Mike Rutherford group. And again, probably could have been rolled out a little better on our end to how we're doing what we're doing. But basically, what the artisan teacher, the Rutherford is, and I'm a trainer for our school system, me and a few other administrators. What that does, in almost layman's terms, is it affords educators to talk educationese to one another, that they're on the same page talking about it. Like if I talk to Jason and Whitney and some of the other, if I talk about gables and hips and trusses and floor joists and that kind of stuff. I used to build homes a long time ago in Florida. If I talk to you about that stuff, you know what I'm talking about. But some of these others, they'd be like, what? I don't know what you're talking about. And we found that to be a deficit in our school system. We'd come out and say, hey, you're really good at this. The teachers wouldn't know what we were talking about. So the artisan teacher has given us a means that we're all talking the same language when we go out and we talk to teachers about how to be better instructional leaders in their classrooms, how to elicit higher achievement from their kids. It gives us an opportunity to go in there and tell them what they're doing right. And initially how it got rolled out, I think teachers thought it was yet another observation. They were going to come into a group of administrators who were going to just tell them how awful they were. And it could be intimidating because if you do it, you get 4 or 5 adults come into your room and they watch you teach. So that is intimidating. And the message got out that then you're pulled into a room and they all look at you and tell you what you're doing wrong. Well, that's not what that's all about. We bring the teacher in, and then the administrators that go around and say, you know what, your stagecraft is fantastic. When you held that book up and you did this and you went pow and made that big noise, or you popped the balloon, whatever it was, that really got the kids invested in what you were learning. And then the teachers are like, well, hey, now they're telling me all the things I'm doing well, and it's a growth experience for them. It focuses on what they do well. I'm a big believer in you focus on your strengths, you mitigate your weaknesses. If I'm not good at something and I'm at a 0% at it, and you can work as hard as you want to, I might get to 10%. I might be 10% good at it. That doesn't really help anybody. But if I'm 60% good at something and you can help me on that strength and get me to 70, 75%, I'm more effective. So that's my whole strategy when we talk about artisan teacher, instructional leaders, administrators, teachers being more effective, is focus on your strengths, mitigate your weaknesses. And that's what the artisan teacher does. And I think for the people who've been through it, and we just had a group of assistant principals, or new assistant principals. We try our best to make sure all our administrators are trained in it. They'd never heard of it, and they went out, and one of the things they do is called 30-second feedback. Go into class, see what the teacher's doing, and then on a sticky note, on an email, on a face-to-face conversation, you spend a short amount of time saying, hey, when you did this in your classroom with your kids, it was effective. And it was effective because this is what happened after that. And you're done. You go off, and the teacher's like, wow. I mean, you go in, you see teachers have sticky notes. Tell them what they did right. So I think that's good.
The last question under this criterion has to do with your personal expertise in either elementary or secondary curriculum. And I think we've all seen your resume and have known where you've been. But what I want to do is kind of couch this question to you. Tell us, how you perceive your skill set in elementary and secondary curriculum development and instruction, and what important, I'm going to add a little to it, and what importance you see that in our director.
My bachelor's degree is in special education, in emotional handicaps. So I do a lot of stuff with behavior. I read people, I read body language. I try my best to get down to why they're doing what they're doing. That's what I do with my students. I did that. My first job was at a school, H.L. Johnson Elementary. It's a K-5 school. It's in Royal Palm Beach, Florida. Built for about 750 kids. I don't remember, it was 44 or 46 portables in the back, because it was growing that fast. This is 1994, 95 school year. We were a whole language school, and if you don't know what that means, it means they just gave us books, and here's a great novel. You go plan your content. You go plan how you're going to assess it. I'm laughing because she's shaking her head. It's kind of been disproven to a degree, but that's where we're at. So I had a self-contained kindergarten through 5th grade behavior class. So all my kids had been assessed to say, hey, A, they have a special need, and B, their behavior's so bad they can't be in the regular class, you have to go to this class. So I had a class of kindergarten through 5th graders, and I taught every subject. I had a math book. I think they gave me a spelling book. Everything else I had to come up with on my own. I had to make it. I had to figure out, not only for the kindergarten kid, little kid, he's 20-something. Mindy, can I use his name now since he's in Florida? Corey, kindergarten kid, all the way up to a kid named Gary, who was a 5th grader, and I had to plan everything for him. Now this, again, was 1994, standards have changed, but I have a good idea of what it takes from that experience to how to plan instruction and how to find materials. That was my first year. My second year, I did an inclusion class. I was a 4th grade inclusion teacher. It was me and another 4th grade teacher, and we team taught. Cheryl was a fantastic teacher, and she taught me a lot. I was a brand new teacher. I've always said, sometimes our brand new teachers, they don't know how to do what to do. And she was a veteran, and it was new for her to do the inclusion, and so we took a group of 4th grade kids, and we took them all. Took the behavior kids, the physical handicapped kids, the mentally handicapped kids, and we put them all in the same room with some regular 4th grade kids, and we just taught. And she taught me a lot on that. Next year, I went back to the self-contained. The teacher they brought in to replace me in that class, she kind of flamed out. It's tough. It's a tough class. It's a tough class. And so they brought me back in there to do that. So it was the same experience there. So that's given me an idea of how to plan instruction. I told the teachers downstairs, and I'll tell the principals, and I'll tell you, I'm not a content expert. That takes years to get that. But by doing the team evaluations and doing that training and the administrative evaluations, I know what good teaching looks like, and I know what I'm looking for, and having that ability comes from when I was a special ed supervisor. I was in classes. I did observations. I had to go in and tell teachers, this is how you can effectively teach this student because he has this deficit, so do this. Now, I've not been the special ed supervisor for about 4 or 5 years now, but I've been the 504 coordinator for that, and it's kind of the same thing. Not in classroom as much as I used to be, but I'm in there helping teachers understand, here are the deficits, here are some ways that you can better reach this student and reach their goals. So that's my how I've gained that expertise. When I moved up here, I took a job at Dobbins Bennett in the high school, and they brought me up here to create their high school behavior program. So again, I had an idea of what in Florida went well and what did, but they had a very strong idea of what they wanted, and so they took some of the most challenging students in that building, all special needs, mostly behavior problems, drug problems, gang problems, and they cleaned it. They were very nice to me, cleaned out the band closet in the circle, and put me some desks in there, and put the kids in there with me, an instructional assistant, and said, have at it, stay in here. Don't let them roam to school. I lost 3 instructional assistants in the first 3 months. They wouldn't stay. It's because we're trying to learn all the subject areas they needed to use to pass classes. I had to learn their science, their biology, their algebra. The saving grace, and I do not agree with this, and I'm glad we've changed from that, but their direction to me was, if you can get them to pass the TCAP competency in reading and the TCAP competency in math, and they have an IEP, they get a regular ed diploma. That's all it took in 1997. So we went about forming plans to teach them high school level content with the knowledge that we were really trying to make sure they could take a TCAP test and pass it. We got a passing score, the school could graduate them. In the meantime, I had found the need that these kids, if they can't stay in a regular ed class all day, and now you're going to put them in a building with each other, in one room with each other all day, that's really not going to work. So I went to them and said, here's my idea. Let's work on academics. If you want to focus on passing these TCAP, let me do some reading, let me do some math, then let me find some it wasn't CTE at the time, but some co-op programs. We get some job skills for these kids. Just take them out and work how they need to work, so maybe they can become productive citizens when they get out of high school. They didn't want the kids out. They refused to let me have a vehicle to take the kids. I had jobs for them. I had 2 kids working at the Purple Cow, and it really cut down, because if you've never had the peanut butter milkshake there, I was hoping I could get some of those free, but they quashed that, so I didn't get the job. They didn't get the jobs there because they wouldn't let me take them. So at the end of the year, I was done. I said, if you're not going to do it this way, I'm not going to go back. So I took a year off. I used my restaurant manager experience. I went and saw Tom Seaton at the firehouse, and Tom gave me a job as one of the managers there. We worked there. I wasn't conducive. I had a young family, and if you've never worked in the restaurant business, it's hard work. You're staying out late. You're closing the doors at 11, 12 o'clock, and you're getting home at 1 or 2, and then you got to get up and do it all over again. It was not conducive to being a good father. So I walked in here one day. It was in August, and I went and saw Dr. Belcher, and I know the day. I know the days of the week because it's funny how it happened. I walked in on a Wednesday, saw Dr. Belcher, and said, "Hey, here's my resume. I'd like a job." She said, "Come back tomorrow." So I had one sports coat, so I changed the shirt, wore the one sports coat, came back. Grant Rowland hired me on the spot Thursday. Friday morning, I showed up at David Crockett to coach football, and Brett Bledsoe, who was the coach, he's like, "Now, who the blank are you?" I said, "I'm your new football coach," and they put me there to teach high school reading and math, and from there, still working on the TCAP competency. Going back, it wasn't hard work, but they need to know how to read, and they need to know how to discern information and use that information to answer questions, and they needed to have probably a 7th or 8th grade level of math. So that's what we worked on. But again, working with the special ed departments in those schools, again, I'm not a content expert. I don't, some people might be, but I think my ability to have trust in the people that are doing that work, and to be able to go in there and assess and evaluate, are they doing the right thing? I think that's very strong on my end. So I think that, that's, I wouldn't say expertise, but that gives me a good sense. And I think the people I go evaluate, I think they have a sense that I know what I'm talking about, and I can help them get better. And I think that really comes from my special ed background, because it's still just, if kids aren't getting it, there's a reason why, and here are some different ideas of how to reach that.
My section is on personnel. Briefly describe an experience you have had with ineffective personnel and tell us how you resolved the issue.
In the HR department, a lot of those things come to me, and one of the questions I didn't get to answer downstairs with the teacher, I knew she was dying to answer or to ask it, so I went to her and said, to ask you a question, and it was basically that question: how do you deal with an ineffective teacher? And I think almost every time, if you have a teacher or an employee who's not effective in what you want them to do, it's because they don't know. They don't know the expectations. They don't know what you want from them. They may not know how to do it. So what you want to do is you want to counsel, mentor that person, give them the means, the tools, the support to become better. Now, sometimes that's honest. Sometimes that's frank. Again, it's about the students. If you make it about you, your feelings are going to get hurt. I don't go out to hurt anybody's feelings, but if I say, hey, I really think you should try this, and you kind of come away with, well, did he tell me to do that, or was he just suggesting it? I think he just told me maybe, so I didn't do it. That doesn't help the kid. So I come out, and it's just honest. It's like, these are the things you need to do to get better. These are what we're seeing. You make a plan, you go out, you assess the plan. Are they doing the things that they're supposed to be doing? And if they are, great for everybody. If they're not, then you address that. A lot of times I've been tasked in my role to go out and for lack of a better terms, you be the bad guy. Dr. Gillis for the longest time had that role. I told some people, downstairs, used to be, you turned in your non-rehire sheets, and I know from teachers, you know what I'm talking about. He'd come out, you had to have it delivered by April 15th. And Roy always made it on April 15th when he delivered these, and it's like turning the lights on in the kitchen. The roaches would scatter because if you didn't get that letter on the 15th, you felt you were safe. So somebody else had made that decision that this teacher or this person was not going to come back, and he had the unfortunate thing to go out there and deliver that. And that's been my role. But here's how I have adapted that role and made it more of an expectation for our administrators. You shouldn't be blindsided April 15th that, hey, you've not done a good job all year long. I'm so sorry nobody told you. That should be addressed on the front end. And it's incumbent upon the administrator, the supervisor, whoever's overseeing that person, whether it's maintenance guy, field work guy, that supervisor has a responsibility to evaluate that person's performance on a somewhat regular basis to build them up. So they know in September, hey, these are things you need to work on. They know in December, hey, you still need to get better at this. They know in February, where you're really struggling to get better at this, so that if something happens in April and they're not being rehired, it's not a blind sight to them. Because to be honest, that's awful. When you go out and give somebody the non-rehire letter and they're like, nobody told me I was doing a good job. I thought things were great. And your counsel, you can't go out and tell people why. You just have to tell them. There's legal issues involved in that. So it happens, and that happened to me a lot, and that's why I'm not going to stand for that. Our people are going to know on the front end if they have issues. This is the issue, and here's the plan to get better. Again, have an issue, make a plan, be directive, and put that into motion. And so, sometimes, and I know I'm going really long, and I apologize. I didn't think I'd talk this much, but Ashley told me I talked too fast, so I've slowed it down. I'd been done 20 minutes ago. No, I'm kidding.
Thanks, Ashley.
One of the things, and sometimes it's just, Ms. Dellinger, is just finding somebody else's niche. You hire somebody. We hired 2 young ladies, and if they're watching, I don't think, one's in Seattle and the other one I think works for Johnson City now. We hired them fresh out of school. We put them at the severe CDC class at Graham. Tough class. Just, it's tough. And they were struggling a little bit. We needed more veteran people, and we couldn't find more veteran people to do it. So we had to put these 2 young ladies in there. And so, but they meant what they were doing. They were trying. So I went to them and I said, look, ladies, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to transfer both of you guys. One of you is going to go to Jonesboro Elementary. You're going to go to the CDC class. The other one's going to go to Jonesboro Elementary School and going to be the inclusion teacher there. And there were tears, and they were like, oh my God, I can't, what does this mean? And I counseled them and said, you're effective. I know you have it in you. This is just not your role. This is not your niche. It takes a certain person to do this. So they showed up the next year doing these roles, and they were great. Fantastic. One of them was Teacher of the Year. They took off in their roles, and they thanked me all the time. They thank you so much for putting this over here. I found what I'm effective at. And I've counseled principals to do that. You might have a teacher teaching ELA in 6th grade who's not really good at that. But they might be really good if they're down in 2nd grade doing that. And I know some of our principals that do that. And you get people mad because they're used to doing this. I've been the 6th grade ELA teacher for 7 years, and I've always thought I was doing fine. Now you put me in 2nd grade. But they've taken off with it, and they become more effective. And 99 times out of 100, they'll come back and say, thank you for putting me down here. I feel successful. So, that's what we're looking to do, make people successful, put them in positions to do their thing.
Okay, good. What have you done in your current position, you kind of touched on this, to ensure every employee is effective, and how do you determine which employee should be retained?
I use a lot of T and Compass data when we're looking at that. There's a lot of evaluation information in there. Again, working with our principals and seeing how they give that feedback, that's what we want to do. And my plan is to be in the schools a lot. If I'm the director, I want to be out there, and I want to be in classrooms. And a lot of our teachers are used to seeing me in their classrooms. I've been in there and see that. I don't think it's that big of a deal. If it's Jarrod coming in there, I think most of them are okay with that. If it's Director Adams or whatever they'll call me, I hope it's professional, right? That might give them a little bit of apprehension, but I'm there to make sure that they feel supportive. And my thing would be talking to the principal. Okay, show me this teacher's evaluation. Show me her observations. Tell me how you've counseled her. I noticed that she's a level 2 in questioning. Tell me what you did to help her. and then see that information, and then go back later and see that teacher and see if there's improvement. And that, again, is what it's all about. You know, we want people to feel supported and get them stronger. So that's what we've been doing. And you know, retention, you know, that's a hard subject. You're talking about, you know, people's livelihoods. You're talking about people that've been to school for 4 years. And, you know, specifically about teachers. If we've done our job on the front end to identify their weaknesses and address those weaknesses, and when we address them, I'm talking about we send them to see other teachers. We give them actionable things to do in their classroom. We might, again, provide individualized or a small group professional development. And, you know, after the first year, you know, we might look to give them another year. We might look to move them to a different grade level or something like that. But ultimately, we're here for kids. And if you have an ineffective teacher 1 year, that sets you back. If you have 2 ineffective teachers for 2 years in a row, you're about 3 or 4 years behind by the time you hit that next grade level. I wouldn't stand for that for my kids. You wouldn't stand for that for your kids. I had horrible teachers growing up. You know, I remember my first grade teacher, Miss Lewis. The only thing I remember about her is we had our desks all in rows facing each other, and I was talking to this girl across the table, and she smacked me right on the butt because I was out of my chair. That's all I remember about Miss Lewis. I don't remember another thing we learned, and she smacked me on the butt because I was leaning across the table. But kids remember that, and our students deserve and expect that they're going to have good educators. You know, again, it's incumbent upon us to make sure we're doing our job on the front end to grow them. And, you know, I worked construction. It wasn't always for me, you know. I don't do construction anymore. It wasn't in my wheelhouse. I mean, I could carry things, and I could lay a house out, and I could nail off a roof and all that stuff. And we couldn't afford one of those air compressors. I had to do it by hand. But I was okay at it, but I found my niche working with kids and being in education and helping lead and grow people. So.
Well, you know your daughter's first grade teacher was much better than that, right?
Yes, she was fantastic. Devin,
Okay.
you still stay in touch with her. That's good. So.
Who was it?
Oh, Lord.
So how many grandchildren do you have by this daughter then?
No, it's
I don't have any.
son.
That's by my oldest son.
Well, I mean, you were a first grade teacher, right?
She's not married, is she?
No, Devin's in St. Louis. She's not married.
She's working on her doctorate, though.
Yeah, she's getting her doctorate.
A long time ago.
Okay.
It was
a while
at
back.
least. It was at least what, 5 years ago?
Probably 6, okay.
Oh, Lord.
Okay, tell me one thing you can do to make your faculty or staff, or just the whole system a team. How are they gonna feel like a team?
I think it's come through tonight, and everybody I've talked to, I value the people that I work with. I think that is important to them, that they understand, that I understand, that I have high expectations. I think people want to work with people who do a good job. I think they want to know that their hard work is mirrored in the people they work with, the people that they teach with, whether it's the same grade level or the same subject area. You know, I think I like to build consensus. You know, nobody likes somebody who just kicks the door and says, this is what we're doing, and just go. I try my best to build consensus. I think I'm a great listener for people when they have concerns. And again, I'm not tooting my own horn, but I think a lot of our administrators, a lot of our teachers would tell you, if they have a problem or an issue, they'll come to me, and I'll do my best to help them out with that. So being a good listener, treating people with respect, but I also think it comes down to being able to see what's going on, see the issue, make a plan, and move forward with it. I think people like decision making. I think they like somebody who will say, this is what we're going to do. And I think people appreciate that.
Thank you.
All right. You good, Mary Beth?
I'm good.
All right. Thank you for coming.
Thank you all. Appreciate it. Sorry for going over.
All right. Thank you.